course, these do not have to be mutually exclusive. Both of my sons graduated on June 9th, both on Mondays, one in 2003, one in 2008. I don't recall what date in June I actually graduated, but tonight is my class is celebrating its 50th year. Yep, 50 years ago, I was in your position. It is fitting that I should begin with these trivial facts, because as tonight's graduates know, I am a master of personal anecdote. Please bear with me as I wend my way through a story that begins on my graduation day. I was 16 years old. I grew up in a poor, loving, and at times dysfunctional family with my mom, my pop, my 3 older brothers, and myriad cats and dogs. We lived in a big, old, cold house, but the only deprivation I felt was quietude. From the time I was very little, every chance I had, I escaped from the chaos of a raucous, male-dominated family. I cherished being alone, a privilege that I seldom enjoyed. As a child, I found refuge at the public library or curled up with a book under the arch of our 2 lilac trees, or in the forbidden, overgrown lot behind our house. In high school, I met my very best friend for life, but overall felt an enormous disconnect. As graduation approached, I was totally overwhelmed and unprepared to go to college, but there was no such thing as a gap year, and my parents' expectations were so high. I remember crying all afternoon on that day in June 50 years ago, but I don't quite recall why. That night, and my graduation pictures attest to this, my parents beamed with pride, and I was forlorn and lost and wallowing in teenage angst. That night, I made a major life-changing decision. I walked off the stage, diploma in hand, and into the woods, where I continued to walk for the next 12 years. During that time, I covered 2,000 miles of the Appalachian Trail, from Georgia to Maine and Maine to Georgia. I maneuvered my way over fallen ancient trees that blocked the path. I rappelled, I forded streams, crisscrossed meadows with seas of wildflowers, and walked small and alone through the enormous northern and southern spruce forests. Interspersed with those walks, my life took inevitable twists and turns. I went to college, spent long stints in Monroe County, Alabama during the Civil Rights Movement, licked a lot of stamps and stuffed a lot of envelopes and walked a lot of miles in protest of the Vietnam War and support for women's rights. Moved to New York and went to graduate school, and in between classes sat at a table on a street corner, collecting money for the tragedy that was unfolding in Biafra. I traveled. I apprenticed to a ceramic artist and set up my own studio, and in the middle of this sometimes frenzied life, I escaped to the woods. I found serenity on the trail. During my time out, which could be as long as 3 weeks and 300 miles, I never once left the trail for a hot shower or a bed in one of the occasional hiker-friendly towns that dot the trail. I passionately protected my solitude and avoided having to share with anyone what I saw or did that day. I ate a lot of pasta and oatmeal and whatever nature provided. I slept by streams and drank pure water, and I savored the silence. I mostly hiked alone, although occasionally I day tripped or packed with a friend. One summer in 1974, I hiked for the second time the approximately 70 miles through the Great Smoky Mountains. Then fall came and went, and then winter, and then spring. My life in New York consumed me, and by now I had bought country acreage and built a little cabin with my own hands in my own woods, and the trail eluded me. I did day trip, but I failed to fulfill one goal, to complete the trail in one journey of several months. The trail is a wonder. It changes by the season, the time of day, and the slant of light. On that trail, I came to know who I am. I came to understand what is important in my life. But what, may you ask, does this have to do with you? You are a class that I care deeply about. Back when we were in 10th grade, I wrote as part of my general comment on your report cards, "This is a delightful class, filled with eager voices. I look forward to first period each day." Your youthful enthusiasm and willingness to take intellectual risks characterized your time in my classes. That is, until this mysterious pseudo-ailment, which appears in no medical manual, spread in epidemic proportions. I did not expect this precipitous fall from grace, and for those of you who tune in, I personally thank you. And for those of you who succumb to senioritis, I do not love you less. You all had the most wonderful intentions, but often missed deadlines, a concept whose importance you do not yet grasp. For 2 years, we shared many wonderful moments discussing literature, and there were other moments, actually many of them, when you hummed or broke into song. You loved to play and to learn, and you made teaching so gratifying. I have spent hours with you as individuals, discussing your aspirations and your dreams, your frustrations and your occasional failures. I have been privileged to hold some of you in my arms when life didn't treat you fairly. I recognize the beauty of the family you have formed, the commitment you have made to our school, and your tireless efforts to make Hudson a better place. I have offered lots of advice, from something as mechanical as placing commas and periods inside quotation marks, although this is a lesson that most of you still have not grasped, to something as dangerous as writing essays on books you haven't read. I avoided counsel on affairs of the heart. You probably thought I had no advice left in me, but I would like to return to my days as a hiker and share a bit of what I discovered on the trail. I apologize for speaking in platitudes, but our most profound truths are here to discover again and again. Embrace your solitude. I realize that this is becoming harder to do in a world in which you are bombarded by technology. But untether yourself each day from texting, tweeting, Facebook, and God only knows what else. Go for a walk and leave your phone at home. You may find that you love being unavailable. Give yourself time to define and affirm your values, to create your own sensibility, to determine how you will philosophically and practically interact with the world. You are responsible for the choices you make, and we already see that many of you are making good and powerful ones, becoming frontline warriors, poised to storm the barricades. Passionately fall in love, but do not believe in the expression your better half, because you cannot have a meaningful relationship unless you are whole. Become a custodian of nature. Be grateful that we still have places where the tiniest insects, the most bizarre fungi, the loftiest trees, the sweetest flowers, and the most majestic mammals live. See an eagle fly, hear a loon laugh, or a moose bellow, and you will feel gratitude for and be humbled by this utter grandeur of life in the woods. One day, one of you, let's see if we can figure out who, distractedly raised your hand and said, "Miss Wasserman, I wasn't listening, so could you repeat what you just said about rainbows?" All your classmates turned to you and one boldly proclaimed, "She didn't say anything about rainbows." It is true that I hadn't, but you clearly read my mind. It has been a privilege to share learning with you. You have given so much to me as your teacher. I love you and will miss you all so much. I am not on Facebook, so you will have to call or email, or better yet, knock on my door. And if you want to go for a walk, I still have a lot of mileage in my old bones, and I will be thrilled to join you.